So I'm going to morph this segment into a whole range of topics. I'm going to be as rapid fire as I can. It's just a hodgepodge of data that we need to be aware of and understand.
So let's do this thing!
So when we look at this next slide, for example, we look at the consumer consumption or the growth of consumption per capita, and we've started to see it's really slowing down. So when you look at, for example, in this list, you're looking at purchase of vehicles on the right scale has started to slow down. And I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. And we start to look at the different factors, the expenditures of Canadians abroad, interest sensitive goods. The point is this, is that consumption is down. People have less disposable income to spend. So we're starting to see people spend less. So that, in fact, will slow an economy down. Now, when we look at housing starts, as I said, we're going to be jumping around here. I look at Alberta housing starts. I'm seeing lots of information from other, I'll say, investor-focused presenters. They're being very concerned about all of the construction that's happening. But at the end of the day, housing starts in Alberta have never exceeded about 4,000. We're going to watch that number. I said a few episodes ago that we want to pay attention to it. There's a lot of building going on, but we have to know what, in fact, that building is. When we get into single family home construction, it is decreasing. So again, when we get into detached single family, so if you're looking for units that you can turn into a duplex or a triplex or whatever it might be, in order for it to cash flow, the number of units that are being built are down. There are lots of purpose-built. I say lots. There's a number of purpose-built detached happening in some provinces, Calgary specifically. But what we do start to see is that there is a trend in the multifamily space. And that really is where the math works for developers. And not only are we seeing it in Canada, we're also seeing it in the US. You're going to hear me a lot talking about the opportunities within the multifamily space because that is where the demand is. Now, think about this. Why do I say that? This is starting to be and has been a trend for the past couple of years. But when interest rates came on, we had to look at how our developers, how our builders are actually getting financing. CMHC put some great programs in place for multifamily. Here's the thing. We've got people flooding into this country. We've said it 100 times. And then ultimately it becomes affordability. They cannot afford a house. They cannot afford a condo. They have to move into that apartment style multifamily unit because that's what's affordable. Now, where's the money flowing to? It's flowing to large developments, 100 units plus. And that's because within that size of units, you can have amenities, whether it be a pool or a gym or a playground. And then that actually is attracting those immigrants in to the country who can and are looking for a place that they can afford. Housing's not an option. They don't qualify for a mortgage. They can't afford the rent on a house. They can't afford the rent on a condo. Multifamily is the direction, and it will be for the foreseeable future for developers and even for investors to get involved and engaged in that multifamily space. So when we look at booming economies, this is one of those things that when we look at car sales, it's often a good indication of what's happening economically. As people feel more confident, they in fact spend money and they will lease cars, they will buy cars. But this year over year, new vehicle sales are up across the country 13.1%. But what's interesting to note is that what they refer to as the have-not provinces right now, which is Maritimes and Quebec, car sales are up. But in the strongest province in the country, which is Alberta, they're not buying vehicles at the same rate of speed. That speaks to consumer confidence as well. So consider that it's just an indication of what's happening economically. And you're looking at all these little data points, and we have to consider where are consumers spending money if they're not spending it on kind of some of the necessities, if you will. And we look at Alberta and we see the trend line has been for a number of years trending down, in fact, when it comes to vehicle sales. An indication, just an indication, a little bit of information of what's going on economically. Okay, so I'm going to do just a broad overview of what's going on in the different housing areas or the different housing regions, if you will. You look at Vancouver, single family housing starts continue to trend down. We look at British Columbia overall, single family building permits trending down. So that's to say, not only are the starts, some people would say, well, yeah, but they're going to start building. The government's going to start building. You know this. Don't hold your breath waiting for the government to solve a problem that they were the biggest part of creating the problem. Single family permits in Ontario continue to be low and trending down. When we look at prices nationally, they're down 17%. If you're looking at that headline, if you're a first time home buyer, you're going, great, finally prices are coming down. But then when you go to buy, you realize they're not down that much, because when you look at down from a peak, it certainly doesn't put it into an affordability range. Sales to new listing ratios in Calgary, everything that comes on, they actually made a headline around slowing sales. They went from 81% sales to listing, or from 82% sales to listing ratio to 81%. So the market in Calgary and Alberta specifically continues to be very robust. Edmonton, Calgary, those two markets, we look at those condo markets. Edmonton is basically non-existent in that condo market. I've said this and given this warning many times. So much money flowing out of British Columbia, out of Ontario, into the Calgary condo market. I am strongly suggesting that you avoid that condo market as investment. That's all I'm suggesting to you. Now, I'm looking at this, and this goes back to what I was talking about earlier. I came to this slide. When we look at the larger multifamily projects, if you just take a minute to look closely at this slide, you see the growth. Why is that? Okay, first off, the math works for a builder and for a developer. If you're buying existing units, the math works. You're looking for a C to turn into a B or a B to turn into an A, all of that languaging. But here's the thing about it. Number one, you can get financing. Number two, the demand is stronger than ever. And number three is that, again, what I said earlier is that the math works better for those amenities that are going to attract a good cohort of tenants. So it's a great tenant profile if you set the building. We'll be talking about that in some of the upcoming meetings. So RAIN members, make sure that you're coming out to those meetings. We're going to be talking about it a lot. So when we look at the tale of two cities, Calgary, Edmonton, if we look at the next couple of charts, the house price appreciation by segment, detached continues to grow in Calgary, and the composite, the overarching, but as well as condo. Now, I want to point out a couple of things. You have to look at historically where that condo market, where it was, where the housing market was. It is trailing. It has been trailing in Calgary. It's now catching up. When you go to Edmonton and look at that market, you see for how many years. First, it went back, you look into 2010 and you come forward into 2023, 2024. It's taken that many years to even come out of the doldrums, and the prices have not caught up. So in over 20 years, many existing condos are the price today that they paid for them 20 years ago. This condo market, I keep stressing it, is a dangerous one to play. It's a dangerous game to play in Alberta from an investment point of view. Caution, caution, caution. Make sure you're working with somebody who knows that market intimately. And that, folks, is another episode of Rein It In on my own. JG, I miss you. Hope this is helpful. If you like what you learned here, go to the description below and subscribe for our free Insiders newsletter, where you can also stay up to date for our upcoming events and our courses.